Testing, test 1, 2, testing. This is Gigaohm Biological. It's June 5th, 2025. Those are the sounds of my backyard. I do have an extra microphone for that. Yeah, someday you will be first. But oftentimes you're first in my heart in the chat. I really do enjoy a lot of the comments and questions that you put out there, whatever your name is, 6 girl thing. Anyway, yeah, we are having a good time. Howdy, everybody. I just wanted to point this out. I'm actually really happy that the bird makeup bot network kind of allows me to see some things depending on people posting on Soapbox, and I find this one very interesting because, again, I will claim very clearly, openly, and loudly that this whole slow roll to some kind of, more detailed understanding of the nuances of our immune system is a fraud. And the idea that now in 2025, and it's June 2025, which is essentially the middle of the year, it is 6 years after they closed schools permanently in 2020, and 6 years after this guy was already on probably 20 or more podcasts telling everybody about how the PCR should be done, is now trying to talk about how injecting a spike, or maybe the mRNA to it, never provides mucosal immunity. And this is really, really, really gross.
Stop lying!
It's gross in so many on so many levels. For me personally, it's gross because I was buying textbooks and reading them as fast as I could to try and learn this detailed immunology while I was still following Ryan Cole and Mike Eden and Kevin McKernan as people who I thought I needed to catch up to. And now that I've caught up to them, I've realized that they're all frauds, especially because each and every one of them, with the exception of this particular long-time operative, I really reached out to Ryan Cole with genuine belief that he was a good guy. I reached out to Mike Eden with genuine belief that he was a good guy, and I was, I just got to say, there's a lot of very malevolent, lying, fraudulent people on the internet. And even if they're not frauds, then the best case scenario for you to realize is that somebody's using their name and their Substack and their X account to manipulate people on the internet. Even if I'm the one who sees Kevin McKernan when he says these ridiculous things and nobody else does. All of that is only possible on the internet. It's not possible anywhere else. This scripted bullshitters on a script of bullshit is not possible anywhere else but on the internet. And Brett Weinstein is a personal, what would you say it? I really feel like he's one of the clowns that would get out of the car that's been in my rearview mirror for 5 years. He's one of those clowns that would come out of the car with McCairn and Kirsch and McKernan and Rose and Bowden, whatever his name is, John Bodwin. All of these people have come into contact with me, heard my biological explanations for what's going on, and then purposefully obfuscated my role in their understanding it. Therefore, sort of removing their responsibility to pass that biology forward. If Jay Bhattacharya says he's not in a position to evaluate my biology, then he's also not in a position where he should feel obligated to pass that truth along. Just in the same way as Brett Weinstein drove me out of his Signal chat in early 2022 by telling me that he didn't think a Zoom meeting with me would help him understand my ideas any better. It was kind of a waste of his time. And so after extracting all the information she could by getting me to draft this review to show her exactly how well I'd absorbed the biology that I had been coached to learn, Piper Stover more or less just handed me off to Brett Weinstein, who then made me teach him the same things that I had learned in order to write the review for Piper Stover that she was going to get in the Wall Street Journal or something like that.
Stop lying!
And so then for a couple years, I get handled by him and Matt Crawford and these other people. And then it was just Matt Crawford for a little while until finally I got picked up by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. via Robert Malone. And there is no way for me to make up how ridiculous, a story so ridiculous as having 2 phone calls on the same day in April of 2022. One from Senator Ron Johnson and one from Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who both told me that Robert Malone told them to watch my stream with Charles Rixey, and that stream had impressed them so much that they wanted to work with me.
Stop lying!
It's all one malevolent show, and over again, I thought I was seeing through one layer of the narrative or catching one charlatan, only to be thrown into the arms of 3 other charlatans, or a whole Zoom meeting full of people. And so I'm not claiming victimhood. What I'm claiming is that I can see something that a lot of people can't. One of the things you must accept is that nobody who didn't need to see the Tommy podcast with Kevin McKernan and Jessica Rose agreeing about the DNA contamination has seen the podcast. No one. Because the internet and social media is so good at providing thoughts for the open places in your head that need thoughts to be put in, that it doesn't need to show this to anybody who isn't at least a little bit skeptical and a little bit seeking out that information. It doesn't have to show it to anyone else. And that's why nobody that you would care to change their minds has ever seen Robert Malone and knows what you're talking about. They've never heard of this guy, never heard of this girl. They definitely don't know she's a surfer with 5 post-secondary degrees. And so this is a very malevolent script over years that was in brochure form shown to us a few years ago in the SPARS Plandemic document. But you got to add a lot of detail to that document before you get to the stage where you have hundreds of performers on social media orchestrating a purposeful fractionation of a narrative to make sure that nobody ever puts any useful puzzle pieces together. And so that instead what we see is the development of icons that will eventually be put in places that they can do serious damage to the authority of the U.S. government, to the protection of the American public. I think you need to be worried about the fact that the FDA in particular is being undermined by this, what appears to be a foreign network. Because the FDA takes care of our food. You want a mass poisoning? You remember Robert Malone and Andrew Huff talking about supply chains and blah, 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 blah. Roger, over. Now we have foreigners, a UK citizen, an Indian guy and an Indian girl and an Indian guy at NIH. We have foreigners that are running crucial pieces of our HHS bureaucracy, billions of dollars. And we have what must be admitted to be an old drug addict and controversial book author and controversial lawyer as our HHS secretary. Now, you can say that I'm being unfair or that that's not but that's the way it is. I'm saying it as objectively as possible. He's a controversial lawyer, a not so controversial environmental activist, but a controversial lawyer because of the things that he's done accordingly during the pandemic, and a controversial lawyer because of the things he said as general counsel and CEO of or chairman of Children's Health Defense. And so what you have is a guy who at some point had a pretty unblemished track record. Maybe you think he was, falsely fighting the things that he was fighting already back then. That's fine. I haven't done enough research. But at some point, he just started saying wacky stuff. And if you're not being shown it by social media, don't be surprised. But there's lots of stuff on Blue Sky and lots of stuff on other groups on X that you're not in, where they are showing all the old videos of Robert F. Kennedy saying all of the things that he won't say now. And going, what is the disconnect here? Is this guy or is this not this guy? And that's a very legitimate question for them to ask, and that was by design. That's the same reason why Paul Offit and all of these people on the same script, including Marty Makary, will come back over and over again to the Rolling Stone and to Samoa and measles and it's a never ending. It's a hamster wheel that only moves forward by a little bit every roll, and it's moving forward in a very planned way. That's what makes the hamster wheel so ridiculous. You're running in a hamster wheel, and the wheels that are moving the hamster wheel, you don't have any effect on at all. That's what this scripted bullshit is all about. It's supposed to look like a spontaneous rise to prominence of this child, and a spontaneous rise to prominence of this child, and a spontaneous rise to prominence of this, I would say, non-American aligned man. And in a country of 350 million people and probably a good 200 million adults, and I would say more than 250,000 qualified adult men and women that could sit here and have a set of ideas and actually try to implement it with a bureaucracy that followed directions. And that's not what you see at the FDA right now. You see podcasters that have been inserted to do podcast-like things, messaging. And that's what you saw before he was put up. And who did he message with, and what did he message about? Well, he messaged scripted bullshit about, do we really need the FDA? But then he got appointed to one of the most important regulatory positions at the organization that he and this former presidential candidate and billionaire has said that I guess America on the whole would have been better without. Something that has been around since like 1908 or something like that, and then got updated by an amendment in the 60s. Like, what are they talking about other than treachery and bullshit? That's how we got here, where RNA cannot pandemic, intramuscular injection is not a proven methodology. Transfection would be a crime in healthy people before the pandemic, and population pyramids before the pandemic told us that there was going to be a lot more people dying in the coming 5 or 10 years, and they just, scooted them together a little bit to create some peaks and called it a pandemic. And the result of that theater is this. We have podcasters like Brett Weinstein still rising, still being put ever more in front of more people with a very ridiculously slow, if not zero to negative progress in their understanding of the reality of things. And they seem completely oblivious to the role of these people and their previous roles, and how that makes them absolutely ridiculous as patriotic, outspoken dissidents in the health freedom movement. These two guys are not on the same team as all the MAGA moms, or whatever the hell they're calling each other. It's ridiculous to think that. That's like thinking that Jeffrey Sachs is on our team. And so the only reason why most of us, or a lot of us, or quite a few of us, fell for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is because he probably is real. He's playing a role that he's been playing for his whole life. He was actually probably raised by people who told him that he had an obligation to the country to be a role model. And ever after that, he has been trying to fill that role with, the advice of thousands of people in his ear, trying to influence what he does next. And in the end, what we see now is just a spent shell of a man who has been used in his last play now. I don't think he can be used much more, and that's why Marty Makary is on all the shows. He's on all the shows. Robert F. Kennedy is doing nothing. We see nothing of him unless he's got those two by his side and he can step to the side and let them speak. I see it because we were supposed to think that that was the guy. That was the, Aaron Rodgers that we were going to get in as quarterback, and everything else was, but then what? All of a sudden we had all these people chosen for us. All these people, the CDC we don't even talk about that anymore. It's just an interim director. So what you have accepted up until now is that PCR is a diagnostic standard. Sequencing is a high-fidelity measurement. Intramuscular injection is proven as a methodology in medicine. RNA has huge military potential. Trump was shot at. He is a patriot, and that mystery and the mystery of the virus was solved. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as HHS secretary is already a huge win. That is what, hold on a second, I do have to click something, sorry. Allow. I will not use those words, but yeah, I might be being too nice to him, but I am trying to maintain some, let people do some of the walking on their own. But please go ahead and do whatever you need to do in the chat. I'm sorry I had to click that off, but that's the way the program works. And so this is the illusion that we are left with now, and people are, spending a lot of energy deciding how to get at Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and convince him to, do something. And that is, again, by design. And I'm going to go out on a very big limb here, and I'm going to say this was a national security operation all along. And I'm talking about like before, all the way back to the first Trump. That it was essentially a Clinton, Obama, big money operation all along. Both parties have been bought out long time ago, and this is the theater that they did. And this theater is something that means that essentially we had Democrat, and that's why, even though some of the cultural messaging changes, and trans is okay and trans isn't okay, and that changes, the foreign policy doesn't change. The policies on the big geopolitical myths doesn't change. It still seems that we really have to be concerned about Russian infiltration on the internet and Chinese infiltration on the internet and Chinese stealing our intellectual property at our universities and Russians, I don't know, I guess putting out internet porn or something like that. And Ukrainians, I mean, what in the world is going on if we're not talking about the fact that good friends of Barack Obama, Indian nationals, who used to be ambassadors, who used to be connected to the State Department, are putting people into place, orchestrating this sort of dismantling of any regulatory structure in America whatsoever, and opening us up to all kinds of sabotage, all kinds of, just disasters, how they could make the government fall apart. That's one thing, but making America fall apart by having the very regulatory infrastructure that keeps our food safe. I mean, that guy is now, Marty and Vinay are now the heads of two. It is crazy. It is crazy. They did not shoot at Donald Trump. That kid supposedly went to the same high school where my boy goes now and where my other two kids will go in the future if we don't move. Think about the fact that we don't know any more about that kid. He lived 4 blocks from my house. Think about the fact that Donald Trump's sons never bragged about the surgeon's great work or the scar on their dad's ear, even though they take pictures with dead animals for their whole life. They're hardcore, really into Bitcoin to the moon. But dad's got no scar from getting shot in the ear. It's interesting that there are like 3 YouTube videos out there where people take a gelatin model of a human head and they try to shoot it with a variety of caliber of bullets, and they're never ever, even with a very finely tuned gun that they can slowly move to the right and try to nick the ear. The moment that the bullet touches the ear, it's able to take the skin and pull it away from the head and completely, like, there shreds it. There's no, as far as they can tell, there's no real way to hit somebody in the ear and just barely nick it. And the odds of that happening. And then remember, don't forget, the bullet was caught on camera by a lucky photographer. Don't forget that one little deal as well.
On every slide, the first slide, I have quotes, and I know that you don't read them at all because you don't need to read them to pass or get a good grade. But this one is pretty cool. The quote from Alice in Wonderland: "One can't believe impossible things," said Alice. "I dare say you haven't had much practice," said the Queen. "Why, sometimes I've believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast." So that's totally suitable for this lecture. A lot of impossible things are going to happen today.
A condition that we will not call autism. I don't like the word autism. He was vaccine damaged. He was neurologically damaged. A condition that we will not call autism. I don't like the word autism. He was vaccine damaged. He was neurologically damaged. A condition that we will not call autism. I don't like the word autism. He was vaccine damaged. He was neurologically.
What the? Where am I? No way. What the fuck?
So yes, we're supposed to believe that the Corbett Report is now back on YouTube, and that's an accident, and he was censored.
To the Corbett Report.
You know, the guy who told us that Bill Gates was a bad guy and that the virus was from a lab and has been promoted by CHD.
Welcome back
and
to another edition of the Corbett Report. I'm your host, as always, James Corbett at CorbettReport.com, coming to you from the sunny climes of Western Japan here in June of 2020.
Remember what telling everybody that Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation are trying to kill everybody does. It makes the Bill and Gates Foundation bigger than life. It makes Bill Gates really important, and it takes all the heat off the national security state that's trying to make us into experimental animals for the Human Genome Project's next stage.
4+ years has given you an error message saying this channel has been removed for violating YouTube's community guidelines or whatever garbage nonsense it said. Well, that suddenly went away, and now there's a channel there with all of my old videos, and 545,000 of my 590+ thousand subscribers are still there. Well, I don't know what happened to those other 50,000, but anyway, suddenly back. Wow.
Maybe they'll reinstate Soph pretty soon and she can start making videos again. Perhaps that's coming. I know one thing for sure. There's a recent coverage of the fact that Steve Bannon's War Room was allowed back on nothing other than TikTok. No shit. So they're all pulling the same stunt this week. They're getting their money back. They're getting their monetization back. They even got a lot of their followers back. Isn't that handy?
And why and all of that. In which I also explained what this building is and its significance and why I'm sitting in front of it at all. So you can find out more about that in episode 399. I also wrote an article at the time that it happened called "Mission Accomplished: The Corbett Report."
I wonder if Mark Kulak has produced more than 400 and some episodes. Seems like a lot.
Is scrubbed off YouTube.
I know I have. But that's different. I just barely got there. This is really a bigger thing. You got to understand that the cheese is free on the internet, and all of these apps are basically free, with ads. That's all nonsense. Your acquiescence to social media allows them to put thoughts in your head that include, on Rumble, buying lots of ivermectin for stuff, and on YouTube includes a lot of other things that you don't need. From gold to different juices, all of these people that have contracts are also reading ads, and they're not reading ads for things that they buy for their family. They're reading ads for things they are paid to read. And that's Dr. Drew, that's Kim Iverson, that's Brett Weinstein, that's all of them. It's not innocent, because nobody should be paying somebody to read ads on the internet for thousands of dollars because they have millions of subscribers. Think about that. Millions of subscribers that you're supposed to believe occurred by accident as a result of their unblemished record of integrity, instead of the pre-programming by their friends or by a military industrial complex that can't have the truth actually meaningfully represented anywhere there. And once you realize that's the most parsimonious reason for the people that we see, the people that we hear, and the arguments that we participate in on these mediums, then you start to see why it's so dangerous to go there, why it's so dangerous to use them. It's like going into the casino with a bunch of cash and trying to keep it. But the cash is your sanity. The cash is your ability to process reality. And once you've been in the casino for too long, the only thing you have is comp drinks, comp meals, and comp rooms, because you're all out of money. It's bad, ladies and gentlemen, and our children are walking right into that trap because we're not aware of it. We need to take back the governance of all of our countries around the world, first and foremost by getting off of social media. And then we can focus on reading books and starting to understand why this concept of evolution is real because we found DNA is a very bad concept if it's applied in the way that it's been applied in the context of the Human Genome Project. Our worst fears imagined in this model include pandemic viruses that could kill 70 or 80% of the people they infect. They also include altering the human genome to eliminate disease, increase lifespan, or make us immortal. And they're all possible because the foundation of our thinking of ourselves is wrong. And that's coming from a biologist, a lifelong biologist. I'm telling you, I couldn't see it either because it's such a seductive idea, a seductive trap. Now, if you want to understand the pandemic, you have to understand the background and stop thinking of it as nothing, but thinking of it as inestimably complex. Even the background in your home, in your studio, in your kitchen, and in the sink drain is composed of an almost unquantifiably diverse and possibly unique composition of microbes and their genetic signals in your sink at any given time. And it would change very, very robustly over time if you could keep track of it all. But they can't. And so as a result, it's all one of these things where when they rolled out the tests and they only had two primers, a coming and going primer, that doesn't work. And that's not a real term. I said that for you and for people who aren't biologists, but there's, primers that go in both directions, and you have those two that are specific for the beginning and the end of a sequence that runs like that, right? And so then the fragments that you amplify either start with this primer or they start with that primer, and then they go what was frankly is a random distance from that point, and then you get a signal from that. And so if those primers are the only thing they use, then they have not differentiated from anything. We don't even know for sure if those primers wouldn't have been just as hot in all of this time that we were using them as they would have been in all of this time before the pandemic started, because it's actually true. There's no data of any kind about these signals before 2020. None. And now we're using PCR as a standard diagnostic for a lot of shit in hospitals. And before 2020, we used it for zero. Zero things were standard PCR tests. Because why? Because each one of those tests would have needed to go through a full FDA approval of a medical device to prove that they were safe, and more importantly, that they did what they said on the label, which is the mandate of the FDA. Make sure that what is on the label is actually in the bottle. And in the case of a medical device, make sure that it does what it claims to do. And that's not a bad misrepresentation of what the FDA's mandate is. And so you should be terrified that we have someone from the UK, probably not loyal to America, someone from India or whose family is from India who's probably not loyal to America, from Stanford, someone from Stanford and not from America at the NIH who's probably not loyal to America. And then at the head of the HHS, we have essentially a person who obviously takes advice very easily and makes very bad decisions, because at one point in time, when he was an adult, he put a dead bear and a bicycle in the park as a joke. I'm not some kind of Eagle Scout who's also been to the moon, but I have a little bit better track record than that. Obviously, I've been to a few fish shows, but we're talking about a guy who has wow. I mean, it's remarkable. It's remarkable where we are, because we are still doing this, and the people that tricked us into doing it are still prominent in this hidden movement that has bamboozled anybody with questions. This hidden movement that includes all these organizations around the world that only have a presence because of social media. And that's why this is for all the marbles. That's why there's a fake vaccine movement in America, and it's been there for a while. It was actually stunted and prototyped and tested in the UK, and then the same characters that ran the scam in the UK brought it to America and ran it with Steve Bannon and Tony Lyons, Children's Health Defense, ICANN, and Bobby Kennedy at the front. That's what I'm saying. And so endemicity is one of those biological things that you can see through once you realize that it's been presented to you as an accepted process and also an accepted endpoint phenomenon, meaning that things can be endemic, like racism in America, or things can go endemic. They can start in a mud puddle or in a petri dish, and then 5 years later can be everywhere on Earth, and unfortunately in the background forever, because that's how these things work. And there's no biology to support that. Notice this diagram is time going this way, right? And so every year from here, this virus is going around the world and staying there. There's no paint that could do that. If you spilled it in the backyard, then, over 5 years, there's blue paint on everybody's shoes. You understand that that can't happen. And there's no difference between the chemical of RNA and the chemicals in a paint. They're all just chemicals. Without some kind of emergent process beyond chemistry, you cannot explain how an RNA, even if it has HIV inserts and a clever furin cleavage site, there's no way to explain how RNA could go from something, little bit, to everywhere and still going. And in fact, as the FDA director just said on Sunday morning news programs, is part of the 5 now coronaviruses that are endemic. So there's 4 other ones that are going all the time that we don't bother to track. We don't have any tests for, and we don't care to test for. We only test for this one. That's also real. And so once you see that if there's a background, like I have drawn here, of black DNA in the background, and then you make a test that says that the red DNA, the new stuff, is the black stuff, then you can convert the already existing DNA in the background to a now circulating new variant just by this lie right here. And now the important thing to realize is that this lie can be orchestrated almost flawlessly, even with unwitting victims that find it, if you use an infectious clone, if you use a clone I shouldn't say infectious clone. If you use a clone of this DNA, so you take the background, you know it's there, and you make a pure quantity of it, so that when you put it somewhere and you tell people to look for something, the hottest signal there will be a pure copy of that background signal. And you design your primers for your tests based on that signal, and then you tell everybody to look for it. They will find it, and they will label it as something that they found in Wuhan. But of course, if you weren't looking for it before the release, then releasing something that's already there has the same effect of looking like, holy shit, it's spreading everywhere so fast we can barely keep up with it. And one of the people who helped seed that narrative was, of course, Jay Bhattacharya, because he looked at seroprevalence studies and wow, this stuff is everywhere. That means that the case fatality rate is much lower than they said, but it also means it's spreading like wildfire. I mean, man, oh man. And so you had to also time this stunt with a known biological phenomenon that could be misconstrued as a crisis. And what is that known biological phenomenon that would otherwise could be misconstrued as a crisis? It's this bump right here. This bump in the population pyramid that was created after World War II when people came back from the war and were prosperous and had lots of babies. And then for the next 20 years, they tried to discourage people from having so many babies, and they didn't. And so this is an expected rise, an anticipated rise in all-cause mortality, and they knew exactly when it was coming. That's why Tony Fauci could get on stage and say, we know it's coming in Trump's term. We know it's going to come because there's an anticipated rise in all-cause mortality that the national security state is going to take advantage of. The national security state was already planning to take advantage of during the Obama administration. That's why a lot of the people in charge of Obama's Ebola response were also in charge of Biden's COVID response. Ooh, that was too easy. It's weird how so many people don't notice that. So we have an explanation. Many of these things are on the list for Grace, Scott Shara's daughter. Watch that. I'm not watching that trial because I can't I cannot devote that much time to it. I assume that other people are going to do it. I know that Children's Health Defense is doing it, and part of the reason why I don't want to cover it directly is because that means that I have to use Children's Health Defense's feed, and I'm not going to promote them at this stage because I know how bad they are in this picture. I mean, Children's Health Defense doesn't give a shit about the babies that die of opioid contact deaths. They don't care about that at all. They really they're a despicable organization at this stage, and anybody that's working for them should be actively working to archive and expose their inner workings, make recordings of what they say so that we really have a good documentation of how awful they are, because a big top tent of health freedom is very much like a road to nowhere. It is a place where everybody can go and shout and yell and scream, and no one else outside of the tent will care or hear. It's a circus that can move all around the United States and the world, and everybody can get together and have a little meeting and feel like the word is getting out, when in reality it's actually being held in by the big top tent of health freedom. And everybody that's not interested in circuses is never coming. Everybody that has no questions about these things and has no interest in these answers is not coming. So the circus has no effect on the towns around. It doesn't have any, it just kind of moves through, and the people that like circuses or are interested in the fat man or the elephant will come to the circus, and those that aren't will be working on the same things they were working on before the circus showed up. And that is the actual role that the health freedom movement was set up to play during the pandemic. But I think The kink in the armor is that they never planned for Brandy Vaughn. And so the whole sort of entry into the pandemic, the 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, she's murdered, that is ugly, and that is messy, and that history is ugly, and that history is messy, because while Brandy Vaughn is teaching what I came to kind of conclusion on my own, which is not a Brett Weinstein statement, it's more like a this has got to be right, because Brandy was saying it differently. Brandy was trying to get people to compare ingestion versus injection. And she was emphasizing the liver, which I've never really emphasized, but it's true. Emphasizing a lot of things that, from a standpoint of ingestion, what are all the ways that we protect ourselves from stuff that we might not have should have put in our mouth, versus, how do we protect ourselves against something that gets intramuscularly injected by a hypodermic needle? And yeah, I think this is where we are. They had to reset that skepticism. They had to catch that skepticism up so that at the beginning of the pandemic, people like Brian Hooker were prepared to say, yes, COVID is real. Yes, the tests work. Maybe they're exaggerating. Maybe there's false positives. Maybe they need to test the vaccines a little more. But Brian says autism. Brian says vaccines. And so Brian's not trying to break the narrative at all, because he's using all the enchantments. At least you have to differentiate the current from the new, and say that those are transfections, because you have 16 years experience working at a government laboratory transfecting and transforming plants. But he's not saying that. And that makes Brian Hooker a intimate part of this illusion and a traitor to our grandkids. And it's not fun for me to say that, because when I was working at CHD, he pretended to know nothing, and that I was so smart and I had to explain all this stuff to him. And that is an absolute lie. And I will probably go to my grave believing that, because I don't think Brian is going to confess. I don't think Brian is going to tell everybody the truth, that he's very disappointed at where we are, because, years and years ago, he stopped going so hard in the paint because he was told by Meryl Nass and Mary Holland and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. that we can use this to change America in a much more forward-thinking way if we try to get Robert F. Kennedy Jr. near the White House. Because that seems to be what happened. And so those people were in place, and wittingly or unwittingly, they were unable to see that the illusion was based on an anticipated rise in all-cause mortality. They were unable to see that people were being murdered in American hospitals. Unable to put it all together. And that's because they're all on the same script. There's no way that Pierre Corey doesn't know that people were murdered. There's no way that Peter McCullough doesn't know that people were murdered. There's no way that any of these people don't know it anymore. Because somehow or another they've heard me say it. They've heard someone else say it. Because people were also murdered in Scotland, and it's being said very well, and it's being documented very well, but nobody's saying it. Oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really, really happy. We are going to win. We are definitely, America is going to come out of this ahead and alive and kicking.
Condition that we will not call autism. I don't like the word autism. He was vaccine damaged.
But you can tell if someone's lying. You can sort of feel it in people. And I have lied. I'm sure I'll lie again. I don't want to lie. I don't think I'm a liar. I try not to be a liar. I don't want to be a liar. I think it's really important not to be a liar. But you can tell if someone's lying. You can sort of feel it in people. And I have lied. I'm sure I'll lie again. I don't want to lie. I don't think I'm a liar. I try not to be a liar. I don't want to be a liar. I think it's really important not to be a liar.
Concerned. But one thing I am confident of from everything I've read is that this RNA exists. You can capture it, you can sequence it, you can move it to other cells and recapitulate disease.
It doesn't matter much at all what you believe about vaccines until we invent really important ones, until we have a pandemic that's killing everyone, and it's not, it's, measles plus, okay, I can tolerate what you think about measles because, not that many people die from it. It's just a big hassle in the end. But no, when we have this new pandemic that is, got 75% mortality, and there'll be no pretense of being polite in the face of these beliefs. It'll be a moral emergency because it has to be.
I see a question in the chat about whether or not the wellness company has tried to get me on their books, and the answer is yes. I have been directly offered something by Paul Alexander once, but that was quite a while ago, and that was at a time when I didn't need help. If I was offered help now by them, of course, I would still say no. But at one point in time, I didn't, have any particular impression or idea about who they were. I just knew that at the original Children's Health Defense inaugural conference in Knoxville, Tennessee, a number of people that I now consider actors were at that conference and tried to convince myself and Mark Kulak that it was interesting to look into the wellness company and Peter McCullough as being maybe a operative that is being paid by them. And that was an interesting little moment of intrigue there that we were supposed to take as real. Also, Robert Malone coming out after Whitney Webb's talk and telling us that, looking us right in the eye, all of us, and saying, "Wow, what a firecracker. I didn't expect that."
I don't care how you get there. I don't care what you do to get there. The goal is to win.
What time is it? Game time. Woo.
All right, so I'm really excited because I do think we have a never-ending set of work to do now because the picture is clear. It's just a question of what rats can we make jump out of the ship first. I am going to be here every day that I can be. It's going to, it feels a little bit like a hamster wheel because I do think that's what it is. But our we have also circadian rhythms that we don't want to insult, and we want to take good care of. That's why I'm trying to keep up with this schedule. And I want to keep encouraging you to get off social media. More importantly, regularly teach and reteach your children what social media allows to happen, which is the coordinated lying. And it allows people to coordinate their lies to your kids, and to you. And it's not just about politics, it's about everything. It's not just about selling stuff.
Condition we will not call autism. I don't like the word autism. He was vaccine damaged.
Autism spectrum disorder is a mythology that they use to make sure that intramuscular injection is never questioned as a methodology. Virology is never questioned as a science, and public health is never questioned as a reason. And make sure you understand that this pandemic and gain of functions ideas that are serving the same purpose, maybe even bumped it up a level in terms of coercing our children into believing these things, almost at a military level, a kind of using military tactics to govern us. And I think that once we start to understand why the cheese is free on social media, we're going to be able to get out. Because the way out is biology, but it's not quite that simple. The way out is really off of social media. And the way that they have been able to ignore the work that we do, that Mark does, is through social media and its programming. And so I do really think that there is a truth out there, and I do really think that we are very, very much over that target. And so we're going to keep on hammering. I think it's important that everybody keep hammering on the biology, keep learning as much as you can, and don't stop. This is for all the marbles. It's for America. It's for America from what we remember to what we want to see in the future. If you're here for the first time, you might be a skilled TV watcher, but if not, I'm sure you're already staying focused on the biology, not taking the bait on social media, and loving your neighbors. The voice that you hear is that of Jonathan J. Cooey. I'm chief biologist at Gigaohm Biological. I helped with a book. I got a barbecue friend. I got lots of papers on PubMed. And YouTube doesn't like me. Surprise, surprise. I don't have sufficient channel history, so I guess they're not going to allow me to do stuff. I'll be back up on JC on a Bike probably next week. Maybe I'll stream to both of them. I don't know. I don't even know if that's allowed. The way that this works is that there are a few very generous viewers and about 100 other extremely generous viewers, in the sense of, I've got subscribers that have been giving me a little bit every month, and by a little bit I mean a significant $10 every month. And then I also have some people that give every month quite a bit more than that, and those few people plus the regulars are really how this works, and the rest is just you sharing. So if you want to wake people up, please share the stream. If you want me to keep waking people up and start buying billboards and stuff like that, then find a way to support the stream at gigaohmbiological.com. There you can also find a link up there on the top called Stuff. That's where you can download the McKinsey report and some of the journal clubs we've done, and that will be a more and more important link as we move forward. There's a schedule there. I'm not really following it right now, but I promise that we are going to start doing that very shortly. There's those links for the support. If you sign up, you're really just signing up for a website and for there's no login afterward, even though it might show something like that. Gigaohm Biological also watches Housatonic live at HousatonicITS.com. Mark's work is really, really important for my work. He's helped me a lot to see what mentors are involved in passing down these ideas and making sure that they're gate-kept. And I consider Mark part of this little intellectual bright web that I'm trying to inspire to develop online. A group of people that fact checks each other, that builds up a network of trust, that's not based on their rumbled connection with Elon Musk or their hopes to be part of the Trump administration, but actually their connections to the multicultural, multiracial melting pot of America. And my Indian Filipino mom and my Norwegian French dad, I guess that's about the best guess I got for you. I'm a multiracial individual, and I'm a pain in the ass for this narrative on the internet where there's about 4 ethnicities, and they're all working together to do stuff, to sell stuff, to stop the pandemic, to make sure the truth of ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine gets out there, to make the truth about vaccines, whatever that truth is, it's getting out there, and all you got to do is join in. All you got to do is chalk up your hands and get a spot on the train and start helping. All you got to do is pull on the rope. And that illusion on social media is of a military scale, a military precision, and a military effectiveness. This video is spectacular because you have to realize that it's not just one guy goofing around. If there were 100 dudes and a few people sitting there encouraging them and a few more people giving them water, you might start to take it very, very much more seriously, even though trains don't need people to stop or start them. Oh, it crashed just in time. Perfect. So I'm going to spin down here and restart this video. Apologize for that. Here we go. Excellent.
Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, Google, all need to be broken up.
We are joined by Steve Bannon, former White House chief strategist and founder and host of his show, The War Room. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us. There's obviously a lot going on
So he's got 2 working shirts on. He's got 3 pens, and I'm sure that this is all bullshit. I mean, it's a costume that he wears. He gets that Carhartt jacket on over the top of this and messes his hair up a little bit. It is a shtick. It's fake. He's a former Goldman Sachs dude. He doesn't dress like this. It's a shtick. It is a traitorous, malevolent scam. And he's one of the worst Americans alive, quite frankly, because of what he's doing here. Look at the smirk on his face.
Could talk about, but for the purpose of this interview, I really do want to drill down specifically on the news of Spotify's decision to reinstate your content after removing it in 2020. Your reaction to
Spotify. Oh, Spotify is going to reinstate Steve Bannon. Oh, that's great. Just like YouTube is reinstating James Corbett. That's great. Maybe soon Brett Weinstein's channel will be monetized again, and then all will be well in the universe.
this, why you're returning, and whether you feel like your approach has evolved since you were initially removed. So I'm just curious. I mean, how did you start talking with them 5 years after the fact? Who initiated those conversations?
I think they might have reached out. My team's been talking to them for a couple of months. I believe the reason is that, you know, on the Apple podcast, we're always up near the top, right in back of Pod Save America. I think it's the most significant platform for MAGA, and particularly we don't cover a lot of the stuff a lot of the other shows do so much better than us.
We've heard you're sort of aiming to reach a wider audience with your return to Spotify. How do you think the show's content or tone has changed, if at all, since 2020?
We were the first people ever to really talk about the pandemic. We changed the name of the show from War Room Impeachment to War Room Pandemic on the 20th of January, 2020. We were a couple of months ahead.
And 5 days later, he said it was a lab leak. January 25th. And I think on my birthday, on the 28th, he had Steve Hatfill on. He changed the name from War Room Election, what was it, War Room something, to War Room Pandemic on January 20th. 5 days later, he said it was a lab leak. Check it yourself.
We pride ourselves on being cutting edge. I think the show is actually much more aggressive than we were in the past. I know that Spotify had a problem when we called for, and I was being metaphoric, as you, I'm sure, heard in the editorial room of the New York Post many times, putting heads on pikes. And I made a comment about the day before, 2 days before, we talked about Thomas More and in the Man for All Seasons, of which they put his head on a pike. And we used it metaphorically about Christopher Wray and Dr. Fauci, two people I might know, or at least Fauci, who went and got a blanket preemptive pardon right from the Biden administration by AutoPen, we think. And they had a problem with that. They took us down. Look, we have a saying in the war room: no whining in the war room, no crying in the war room. We never reached out to people when they took us down. We were deplatformed by everybody around Instagram, TikTok, YouTube.
We were deplatformed by everybody. So it's the standard narrative, right? You can tell the real truth tellers because they were deplatformed at the beginning of the pandemic. None of these people lost a job. None of these people were at a University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine faculty position and then were told not to come in because the faculty's scared of you for talking about transfection. None of them. He's talking about the rise in his popularity, the rise in his influence of his podcast, the rise in the influence of these different platforms like X, and he will say that specifically X, because that's what they are doing. They are promoting the formation of an internet, which is a substitute for any kind of what would have been called, mainstream media before, like TV and radio and stuff like that. Now they want something that can be just projected over the whole planet. One narrative control network. And if they form that, if they are able to form that, then the power that is represented by the New York Times and all of these other, places, even the power that Hollywood has over people will be secondary to the access that people give away when they use social media every day. Never mind try to usefully interact with the world on social media, because that's the real. If you're just there to look what people are lying about, that's one thing. But if you're going there to try and make money or to become, get your word out, it is not that kind of place. It's not. It's really not. Everything is programmed.
So it wasn't Twitter. It wasn't out of the ordinary. I think our content's the same, probably more hard hitting than ever. But look, these guys have managed a good business. We never reached out to them or complained when they took us off. We just took it as, hey, that's the natural order of things. And eventually, maybe we'll get back together. We put a deal together. We're going to launch on Monday. And
they're paying him. We put a deal together.
And we couldn't be more excited about it. We think they manage a great platform, and clearly
you go from censorship to big contracts. It's fantastic, isn't it? I mean, it seems like that's exactly what has happened to all of these people. They go from losing their hospital position supposedly to having their own business that's online and making 10 times as much as they made, and they're so happy they went private. Boy, I love being a fellow of both the Brownstone Institute and IMA and the World Health Organization, because that or the World Council for Health, because that really amounts to $12,000 a month. It's perfect for rent and everything. Plus, most of the travel's free. This is great.
They're the industry leaders. So
I was told that if I keep doing it hard enough, I'm gonna get a Skyhorse book in 2026.
More people have access to the war room.
Yeah, and I do want to get into that because you are reaching a very wide audience. A lot of people on the left, in the center, on the right, all tuning in to listen to you.
So it's funny, right? Because that's what Peter Hotez and Z-Dog agreed on, is that one thing that a health freedom movement can do is unite people on both sides of the aisle. I wonder where they learned that from. Did they learn that from the operation in the UK where Polly Tommy was on billboards swaying 6 million votes for prime minister? Did the Goldman Sachs operatives see that as a test run, or like, holy shit, I know how we could do that over here, and I know who we could use to do it?
Stop lying!
Oh my goodness.
Part of the deal, though, did Spotify give you any guardrails or say you can't talk about this or that?
No, we would never accept a deal like that, and they didn't. I think, look, at the time, I can understand, this was during the pandemic. Also, it was during, we were pretty hot running on the election fraud. We're still adamant that the election was stolen. We want to adjudicate that publicly. We think that information's got to come out. If it turns out we were wrong, we're wrong. We don't think so. But like I said,
wow, look at how wishy-washy that is. I'm driving everybody to believe that the election was rigged, the election is fraud, but if it turns out to be wrong, then I guess I'm wrong. I mean, think about that for a second.
Stop lying!
And that is like the worst thing that you could say unless you're not a patriot. It's the worst level of certainty that you could have unless you're not a patriot. That's just an absolute jackass right there, admitting that that's all he is. He's been screaming the war room and election stealing for the last 6 months. But now I changed to the pandemic because I've got so much integrity. I need 3 pens and 2 shirts.
I think we're harder hitting now than we've ever been, particularly on some hot button issues. But no, there was no discussion at all about any type of content that was off limits, and we would never agree to that anyway. But I believe they looked at the show over the last couple of years, and they see what we do day in and day out, the type of guests we have, and how a lot of our people are at the senior levels of the government, and there's a ton more at the more working levels of the government.
Are you concerned, given the fact that this has happened before now where you were...
So he kind of admits it there, right? And one of the things that you probably haven't considered is that social media and its programmers don't need to focus on Joe Main Street. They actually really only need to focus their programming on government employees. Because that's, of course, what a militarized social media would be concerned with, right? People with power being controlled, people without power being neutralized or distracted. So he says he's got a lot of followers inside of the Beltway, and whatever else. Yeah, that's because that's where social media focuses its programming and its analysis. And make sure that, if they're going to test anything, if they're going to use it anywhere, they're not going to use it on some guy in the back of his garage. They're going to use that. They're just going to turn his off. They use it on people with power, and they use it very well because Everybody in office is using social media unless they're read in onto the military use of it. That may even be why they had this little Signal chat, theater a couple weeks ago or a month ago or whenever it was. Just to emphasize that Signal is a place where you can have various private conversations. It's just that they shouldn't have done it with the way that they did it. Signal, don't forget about Signal. Did you hear the name?
Banned. Are you concerned that in another 3-4 years that these tech companies could have another reversal and you would maybe be silenced again?
This is for everybody, and even for people on the left. That's what we're adamant about. Right now, we're a big supporter of President Trump's administration is really going after the oligarchs. If you look at...
He's really going after the oligarchs, but Palantir's cool. Palantir can make any databases they want to. We can put together all the databases of all the databases and all the medical records and all the remnant sequences. I mean, imagine the scenario. Here's a good one for you. Imagine the scenario where they think that there's going to be some geophysical event coming, like one every 11,800 years, the pole is going to reverse and there's going to be giant tidal waves. And so they've been building underground bunkers and stuff to prepare for this. Then what is the other consequence of that from the perspective of the Human Genome Project? Holy shit, we better sequence these people before they're washed away. And we better find a way to store that data, and we better do it fast. I mean, it's very easy to see most of what's going on right now as easily justifiable if you told a story in the back rooms and took people into a couple underground passages and showed them a couple big metal doors and said, look, we got cities underground because we're ready for this shit. There's a lot of data that's going to be gone, a lot of data we're never going to be able to collect again. So you can think that you're protecting some society here, but this is all going to be washed away, man. When the pole shifts, everything is going to be gone, and the only people that survive are going to be everybody that gets on the plane with Peter Thiel and goes to New Zealand, and the people that have the keys to the underground passages that start in the Colorado airport. That's it. Everybody else is SOL. I think that people have been told that story. Not a lot of people, but people are telling that story. I think the idea that there's going to be a huge collapse of the population pyramid and so that we need to be prepared for that is definitely a story that's been told, because that story is backed by real math. And this guy is a performer, former Goldman Sachs employee, self-declared intellectual property expert, and master manipulator.
First off, they got Google in a federal court in Northern Virginia.
I should just say really a master thespian, because he's not a master manipulator. All actors, if they are really good at it and their craft, can play a role very convincingly. It's the role that he plays very convincingly here, and right down to the ridiculous outfit.
In a federal court in D.C. going after the monopoly on search engine and on advertising. We got Facebook in federal court, FTC. Facebook, essentially, Zuckerberg and Twitter tried to destroy the New York Post and the paper Hamilton founded and Miranda Devine off of something that was absolutely truthful. And if it had been properly promoted on social media, would it change the direction of...
Think about so many details and stories you don't understand. What a manipulative bastard. I mean, really, what a manipulative bastard. Let's go back to 2020. What the hell? Why isn't it playing? Why isn't it playing? Oh, I didn't have it up there. Shoot. It's always the same thing. I don't have it quite programmed like I wanted it to.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone. I love you too. Thank you. So I'm so happy tonight we can get gathering here and celebrate the first year of anniversary of our new federal state of China. Yeah. It is not just an eventful anniversary. Actually, for our Chinese people, we know how tough, how difficult. We have to overcome numerous difficulties we face to the life threats, and finally, we can push the whistleblower movement, and we can make China government, Chinese Communist Party, and even China military scared of us because we reveal the truth to the world, which they want to block, which they want to suppress, and which they want to cover up, and even take over the world.
So the Chinese Communist Party wants to take over the world, and Li Minyan is going to stop them with a free federated Republic of China, I think.
We Chinese people are smart. We Chinese people work hard. We Chinese people are very honest. We are the good people. But China government try to tell the world we are someone who are not honest. We are someone cunning, and we are someone rude, and we are someone cannot get along very well with the Western civilization. No, now we use our action to tell people they are wrong, and we are going to remove this Chinese Communist Party regime and their communism ideology. We will tell the world we Chinese people can work very well with the Western people, with democratic culture, with the Western civilization, and also combine with our virtues from our Chinese culture. We want to tell the world that we are brave people. We use our actions to show the world we dare to stand out, and now we dare to tell the world the truth, especially during historic pandemic. We tell the world that the virus, COVID-19 virus, come from the lab in Wuhan.
Now, I don't know if you're noticing this right now, but I'm noticing it. She hasn't said once. She's never missed a word. It's pretty remarkable, actually, how fluent she is, given, and how deep her vocabulary is, how much she can remember, given that by her accent, it sure sounds like she just started speaking English like a year ago.
It was created by the Chinese Communist Party regime and also the China military scientists together with their colleagues overseas, and then get along with the scientific misinformation campaign internationally involved Dr. Fauci, CDC in US, Lancet, Nature magazine, WHO. Even yesterday, the NIH director Francis Collins is talking on Fox News, said he still thinks bioweapon is a conspiracy. He still thinks that it's from some nature virus, maybe somehow the bat fly to the lab and then jump out. So still that is nothing about Chinese unrestricted bioweapons. He still called that conspiracy. Now, even the emails reveal that what I told Mr. Muda and what Mr. Muda delivered to world, what our whistleblower movement people try to tell the world from last January, that these are the people who work with Chinese Communist Party. They are using misinformation, using lies and denial. They try to cover up that the fact China government spend years, spend money, and try to look for the good material. Later, they are successful, and then they make the novel, non-traditional bioweapon, and then later they intentionally release it.
It's novel, non-traditional bioweapon. Wow, I didn't know that.
Out of the lab in Wuhan to the innocent people, make them become the first victims in the world. And because I revealed it from 19 January 2020.
So 19th January 2020 was one day before Bannon would change the name of his war room to War Room Plandemic. And 5 days after that, he would declare it was a lab leak.
Because Mr. Muda, he dared to talk about it through his YouTube channel. He faced a big risk, and then China government scared. So China government immediately changed their plans. So they have to admit human-to-human transmission. They have to tell people, yes, there are more and more cases happened already. And then they have to finally locked down Wuhan in a very inhumanity way, but at the same time, they deliberately take the advantage of this outbreak and spread the virus to the world, and then tell people this is just a flu. And then they tell people what? They bring out the PPE from US, from other countries, and then they know hydroxychloroquine works because we, Dr. Moore, Mr. Lude, and me, we tell the world from 29th January that there are drugs for COVID-19 virus, efficient, safe drug, which we have used for many, many years. WHO said that is one of the safest drug in the world, hydroxychloroquine. China government then, 4 days later, China military.
Just remember that right now in America, Pierre Corey has a book about ivermectin. There's a Canadian doctor who's saying ivermectin plus a number of different things can cure cancer. Nobody's pushing ivermectin as a cure for anything right now, except for maybe the doctors who still sell it. But nobody in the big narrative. Brett Weinstein never talked about hydroxychloroquine. Remember that, because it is something to keep straight in your mind. This is the narrative moving on.
Apply the patent that hydroxychloroquine can be used for new purpose as treat COVID-19, but then they don't tell the West. I mean, even later when President Trump at that time tells the world that hydroxychloroquine can protect you, what happened? Dr. Fauci, in his email, he's happy to say some doctor try to discriminate President Trump's word, and then they use the fake data together finally to suppress hydroxychloroquine. There are brave doctors in the world. There are brave scientists in the world. There are brave nurses in the world. Another email from Dr. Fauci's emails, we say one Harbin nurse, young nurse in China in mid-February, tried to tell some truth to NIH, and they try to alarm the world that even last February, China government is covering up the death cases, and they don't ask people to get treated properly. But what? Fauci shared it with another people, and later we heard that something may happen to the nurse. Our intelligence shows, which we cannot confirm, but we know this.
Listen to this nonsense. This is in 2020. This is extraordinary if you see it from our perspective
News
now.
was not revealed by Dr. Fauci, and he pretended he know nothing. And then he worked with China government, worked with other people on his side. They criticized President Trump with Chinese Communist Party. They said, you U.S. people, your democracy actually is something failed. You should learn from the dictatorship, like Chinese Communist Party. That's why our Winnie Bear, our chairman, she sits there, said, oh, we are celebrating the anti-COVID trophy. You should learn from us. You should praise us. That's we said. That's what we read from the top medical journal, like Lancet, like Nature, like Science. They work with them all together. So all these things actually, I keep delivering through Mr. Lude's YouTube from January until end of April in Chinese, but somehow also at that time, we have our great friend like Mr. Beno, like Mr. Bill Gates, and like many other people like Dr. Navarro. We have our brave friends. They know this intelligence, and they try to deliver it to the U.S. people too. And also they face a lot of criticism from mainstream media, from Mr. Fauci, from Dr. Fauci, from NIH, from all these people. So what I want to tell you now, these are just little bit things happen on the way when we try to expose the fact of COVID-19 to people. It's very hard. I face life threats. My family is under the strict surveillance. It's almost like stay in the prison in China. I have to cut off my connection with them. And I know many people like President Trump and like Mr. Bannon, like Mr. Bill Gates.
Mr. Bill Gertz is the guy who published my quote in the Washington Times in May or April of 2020. Bill Gertz. I have been told by other people that Bill Gertz is definitely an insider, not a good guy. So to be put in that article by Bill Gertz is, in retrospect, kind of, it's obvious now.
and like our good friend Mayor Rudy. And when they talk,
Mayor Rudy. So she's good friends with the mayor of New York. Does that explain why her marriage license is in New York? It's starting to make her accent sound weirder and weirder every minute.
talk about CCP virus, they also face a criticism. People thought they are nuts, and of course, I'm the nuts, some pants on fire, all these things. All the people like Tucker and other media in India, in Spanish, in Italy, when they try to interview me, they get the threats, and some of them has to stop their interview. That's why also we try a lot, still
I
not
hope
our
my
voice
stream is not crashing
kind of
again.
limited. But now I'm so happy because
Not sure what's
after
going on. I'm
1
going to
year's
escape
effort,
here.
together with all of people here and
It'll
even
fix
more people
itself
who
in a minute.
cannot be here, but they're working online, offline. But
Sorry about that. I will leave it there. I'm going to go back to that video, though. I guess I can't leave it there. I just want to show the end of it.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. My reports. So, if you don't realize that, you will let them go, and they will keep working on that. I'm the virologist. I work in the top virology lab in the world for over 5 years. And my husband is also the top coronavirus expert. Also now he's working with China government. And my supervisor, all the WHO core expert.
Oh, so her husband is working for the Chinese government right now. Nice. So her husband's a shithead, too.
I can tell you
Nice.
that in the lab, to produce virus, never only one type. And China, from at least 2010, conducted by China CDC head George Fugao, they tried to search the new animal virus all over China. Not only coronavirus, but also dengue, Zika, Ebola, West Nile virus, and hantavirus, all the dangerous virus. Especially they want to search something can make your brain damage. Which now we say, yeah, in COVID-19, there are 1/3 of people after infection, they get a brain problem.
Wow. Just like the SPARS pandemic. Just like Kevin McCairn said. Wow. 1/3 of the people have brain damage. That's why that lady was licking the window in UK. And that's why. Wow.
We need to solve it. So now I stand here. We are celebrating the things, and we are celebrating Rule of Law Foundation, Rule of Society Foundation, their help, their work, because they help me, save me from Hong Kong, and I can stay here, tell people I'm still survive. What I want to call for is we need to spread the truth all over the world. We need to let the government, let the scientists, let the doctors, let everyone understand what happened to us. Yes, we are in an unrestricted bio warfare. Unrestricted, I defend, because it's out of restriction. That means China used many ways to conduct it. The only purpose is to destroy your economic, destroy your social order, destroy your civilization. Finally, that you all controlled by Chinese Communist Party. At that time, remember I'm Chinese, I tell you, at that time, it's late. It's late for all of us. No future, no next generation, no security, nothing else.
I'm not sure what they're clapping for.
Okay, I think, thank you. I think we are run out of time. So I will pass the time to our next honored guests. And I will keep fighting until the last minute. Last minute, for me, all for Chinese Communist Party. Thank you.
Dr. Li Mingyang is not only a hero to the Chinese people, not only a hero to the American people, she's a hero to all mankind. The last thing I want to say, when Dr. Li Mingyang left Hong Kong in the middle of the night because of the great work of the Rule of Law Foundation, the Rule of Law Society, the great heroes there and supporters. She defected and came out with tremendous danger to herself. When she first got here, I think We spent 3, 4, 5 days in due diligence with lawyers and scientists and all of that. And I have to say about her personal journey, she was very meek, very shy. The woman that was on the stage tonight was so shy and so demurred. I got to tell you, 1 year of breathing the fresh air of freedom has... We have to get her citizenship because we need her to run for the United States Senate.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I cannot name all the people who helped me. Mayor Rudy, Mr. Bannon, Dr. Navarro, Mr. Bill Gates, all...
Those 4 names alone: Dr. Navarro, scientific advisor to Donald Trump; Steve Bannon, like Bill Gertz. I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, this is the time right now for America to wake up. It's the time for people on the left to realize how trapped their neighbors are in this illusion of what Trump is, and also realize that they're trapped because their Trump derangement syndrome, their inability to process anything reasonable when Trump is in the picture, is also part of this script. Perfectly played. A good friend of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton has played us twice, and he's in his 2nd term of playing us. And the social media moguls that would like to use social media to become super national governors of our societies online, they are doing it too. They are in cahoots because it is a national security operation designed to put a control grid and information technology gathering grid in place so that as much data can be collected as possible before the population pyramids collapse.
The people, our honored guests, the Morgan family, all the people.
The Morgan family?
Him, Natalie, young but beautiful but talented. Yeah, all the people. I appreciate everyone. I appreciate.
I'm declaring war on fat gay kids, not the kids themselves, but on whatever's making them so fat, gay, and pathetic. I'm talking seed oils, SSRIs, MSNBC, and perverts masquerading as teachers and guidance counselors.
So the danger of AI is that history can be effectively erased. And this is not a perfect AI video, but it's pretty good. And from the perspective of people getting their information from a small phone and a quick scroll, it is not the fakes that you need to be concerned about. It's the idea that no one has faith anymore. No one has faith in the truth anymore. That's a problem. If it becomes a world of lies, whose world is it then? It's definitely not ours. It's scripted bullshit, ladies and gentlemen. Even the AI fakes on the internet are scripted bullshit. They're designed to lead you to believe that there's even I'm glad that's paused a little bit. There's even a plausible deniability should there be AI in between. Should there be social media in between? In other words, if there's murder happening somewhere in the world, but the only information that you can get is from social media, then if that's a convenient way of denying something, you can. If you employ somewhere in the military chain some AI-generated data points, then at any point in time you have plausible deniability for why the bomb went off on the wrong car. Well, there's this one gear in the mesh here that we can't really control. It's kind of just a wild card. And that wild card could be as fake as the domain server, where you just, write a program with 5 lines that prints out celecoxib, famotidine, ivermectin, and remdesivir. I think it's still really important to do our homework, so I'm going back in time right now. Maybe it might be important for us first, though, to take a break and have a musical break for a second. I'm gonna do that now, and then I'm gonna go back to Bobby's video. So I'll have to stop and start the video twice, or the slide deck twice, but that's all right. I think this will work out okay. I'll be back in a second. And again, I'm just taking a little break here to get my water filled up and stuff. Thank you very much for being here. It's been really great. I'm really excited about the progress that we are making. I'm really starting to like piano music. So this is kind of a selection for you, what I have come to understand as jamming on the piano, at least recently. And then I'll see you in a few minutes.
isolation and purification. Can you tell me what the difference is between the two?
Isolation, what was it?
Isolation and purification.
Of the virus?
Yes.
That
well,
was
you
Brad,
isolate a virus by...
that was Brad Mildow.
Finding the virus which causes a disease. You purify a virus by making a lot of, just by purifying it so you get a pure virus.
Okay.
I don't understand what the issue.
They interchange the two, and I wasn't sure
I see.
If it was the same thing or if it was two totally different.
No, it depends on how they use it.
Sorry, typing MEHLDAU is the name you're looking for, Christy.
Okay. Can you explain the process of HIV isolation?
Well, didn't Dr. Gallo do that? He actually isolated it. So, yeah. Why should I do all of this? This is all textbook stuff you're asking me.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show, the second half. This is Gigaohm Biological, a high-resistance, low-noise information brief brought to you by a biologist. It's Thursday, I think. Trail mix there. Probably not the best thing to have up on my thing. I'm not really advertising good behavior there. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Again, please share stream.gigaohm.bio. That's my own website that I pay for. And gigaohmbiological.com if you're looking for a way to share everything from one point. That might be the best way. And if you would like to support the work, join that scroll over there on the left. Please do so at the same site there at the top. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in a certain place in America right now, and that place is right here. And we need to understand why and how we got here, what these people are up to, and what the people that they are orchestrating are up to. And it is a very complicated web that's essentially best characterized, in my humble opinion, as a Trojan horse. They set up Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to use him as kind of a big top tent of health, freedom, and the what do they call that guy? The ringmaster? Is that what he's called? The ringmaster? Is that what do you call the guy? I think the guy in the middle of the circus is called the ringmaster. I believe that. So, they have him playing ringmaster in the same way that, the guy at Chuck E. Cheese's plays the mouse. Like, it's not a real position, but it is a position that, because the staff in the restaurant and the kids that come in for the birthday party think that the mouse is the guy running the show, that they talk to the mouse and defer to the mouse and scream when the mouse says scream. And that's what his role is. And that's what even the role of probably Jay Bhattacharya is. And maybe even the role of Marty McCarty. They're just guys that have been, over the last 4 years, vetted on social media to make sure that they can read what they're told to read, or more importantly, stick to the talking points that they are given. And so I think one of the best examples of this is Kevin McCairn. Kevin McCairn is one of these guys who's been auditioning for 5 years and unfortunately isn't going to make the cut. And very early in the pandemic, his script was so well formed, especially with regard to who he had to oppose and who the bad guys were in the no virus movement or in the 5G movement. And his focus was on none other than Andrew Kaufman, a guy who had grants from New York State, Governor Rudy, and Governor Cuomo or Mayor Rudy and Governor Cuomo to make biometric devices to monitor prisons for suicide behavior. So the lack of progress in this charade is the way that you see the charade. If you realize that this guy was calling Mark Bailey's wife a whore for more than a year and making memes with hot dogs in her mouth, and then realize that in 2022 he just decided to stream with the guy who is racist and all kinds of other things, and also calling his wife a whore, and he just streamed with him, because that's what you do, I guess, when you're part of a national security operation and don't know where the script is going to take you. Just know that you signed up.
it's literally turning into worst case scenario.
So he said that
Just-
with the presence of two people in the close orbit of George Webb, one of the worst actors on this. He was on social media, for shit's sake. He was on 60 Minutes. And not only that, but the deep state operative Robert Malone promoted the link of the CBS paid version of George Webb's, military Wuhan Games 60 Minutes episode. And then later, of course, he's going to do the same shtick.
Literally turning into worst.
4
I'm
years
afraid
later.
that the latest data tells us that we're dealing with essentially a worst case scenario.
The same exact shtick with somebody as fake as Charles Rixey. Somebody who is woefully not up to the task of whatever they imagined he could do with an Excel sheet and some help from a podcaster in Japan. This is one gigantic, magnificent joke on humanity. And if you don't start to see that Nick Hudson and Jonathan Engler and the group Heart, led by Claire Craig and Jonathan Engler, is just a plant the same way that Children's Health Defense is, or that ICANN is, if you don't see that PANDA is nothing but a time-wasting organization and a bunch of obfuscators and liars that have done nothing, basically, except for lose 3 consecutive recordings that I made for them using my time for their organization under no pay. All those videos that got lost by all of these people, it's all part of the same malevolent show that is trying to turn social media into a world governance software suite, and trying to get everybody in the English speaking and, for that matter, technologically using world to acquiesce to it. Just because you don't use WhatsApp doesn't mean WhatsApp's not important. Just because you're not in a Signal chat doesn't mean Signal's not important. Just because you're not on X doesn't mean that X isn't having an influence on an awful lot of people in your government.
Actually, JJ Couey,
Just because
insistence, and I think he's right on calling them transfections rather than vaccines.
Just because you don't follow Brett Weinstein doesn't mean his following isn't significant, or more importantly, the cats that he herds and distracts and neutralizes aren't significant. Of course they are, just like the thousands of people that Naomi Wolf convinced to read Pfizer documents for 2 years, instead of just teaching American children that intramuscular injection has never been proven as a great methodological, thing in medicine. It's just not. And calling intramuscular injections vaccines doesn't make them any more miraculous. But these people think so, or at least they walk that line. They do that shtick.
Right.
You have now a rough relation.
We're going to get out of here because I don't want to use that. That's still a leftover slide. I told you I wanted to do the music first. I'm going to go back up here. And these were all put in place together, so that means I can start with this slide, I believe. Yeah. So again, I told you we've got to do the homework required, and I think the homework required is to actually try and understand Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as an unwitting Trojan horse, just way over his head for his whole life. That's got to be what this is. He's being played by people that work for the national security state. That's the best case scenario. Worst case scenario, he's just going along with it, swinging on chains and doing push-ups and testosterone replacement therapy until he's all used up and they don't need him anymore. He's no good to them until Marty McCarty's stinking over. 2022.
Talk to us. Jeffrey Sachs is the director of the Center for Sustainable Development at Columbia University. He's the president of the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network. He's the winner of the 2015 Blue Planet Prize, a best-selling author, and a chairman of the Lancet's COVID-19 Commission. The commission was announced, as I recall, I think in June of 2020 by Richard.
That's right.
And then your joining the commission happened in November 2020. And you assembled a task force for the prestigious medical journal, 190-year-old medical journal, to determine the origins of COVID-19.
You hand-selected, I think, a number of them, of the commissioners, but most notoriously Peter Daszak, the president of EcoHealth Alliance. And to be chairman of the task force, Daszak was essentially forced to recuse himself in June of 2021, and then you shut down the commission altogether in September of 2021. And you did something incredibly courageous, which was to publish an article in PNAS, which has gotten a tremendous attention. I'm sure you're getting a lot of.
See, it's May 2022 there. He's talking about an article in PNAS. Nobody calls it PNAS.
Both negative and positive blowback from that. But essentially saying that your belief is that the best evidence is that that the COVID-19 virus came from a Chinese lab, but that it was based upon U.S.-funded technology. And I would have to agree with you on that, having done a lot of research on it myself. But let's talk about how you got involved in it in the first place. Were you approached by Richard Horton?
Yeah, so Bobby, great to be with you. Really fun and an important topic. Let me just fill out a few of the details and just correct a little bit of the detail on that.
It's almost like Jeffrey's like, wow, you're not very good at this yet. Let me start over again. Thanks a lot for playing along, Bobby. I'll just take over from here.
Because to put it clearly, I'm chairing a commission for the Lancet called the Lancet COVID-19 Commission. It's issuing its report in mid-September. So the commission continues. Within the commission, I established 11 task forces. So some were on how to respond to the pandemic.
It's 2022. Here, I'll do this. Oh no, why did it start over again? Darn
it. Announced, as I recall, I think in June of 2020 by Richard.
That's right.
And then your joining the commission happened in November 2020. And you assembled a task force for the prestigious medical journal, 190-year-old medical journal to determine the origins of COVID-19. You hand-selected, I think, a number of them, of the commissioners, but most notoriously Peter Daszak, the president of EcoHealth Alliance. And to be chairman of the task force, Daszak was essentially forced to recuse himself in June of 2021, and then you shut down the commission altogether in September of 2021. And you did something incredibly courageous, which was to publish an article in PNAS, which has gotten a tremendous attention. I'm sure you're getting a lot of both negative and positive blowback from that. But essentially saying that your belief is that the best evidence is that that the COVID-19 virus came from a Chinese lab, but that it was based upon U.S.-funded technology. And I would have to agree with you on that, having done a lot of research on it myself. But let's talk about how you got involved in it in the first place. Were you approached by Richard Horton?
Yeah, so Bobby, great to be with you. Really fun and an important topic. Let me just fill out a few of the details and just correct a little bit of the detail on that, because to put it clearly, I'm chairing a commission for the Lancet called the Lancet COVID-19 Commission. It's issuing its report in mid-September. So the commission continues. within the commission, I established 11 task forces. So some were on how to respond to the pandemic, some were on the financial crisis that emerged around the pandemic, some were on other issues about public health. But one of the task forces was about the origins. And that's the task force where I asked Peter Daszak to chair.
So there were many task forces, and most of them fully reinforced the existence of pandemics as a phenomenon and as a future challenge. And one was investigating the source of the pandemic. And Peter Daszak was involved, but probably shouldn't have been.
And essentially to organize the task force. So for each of these 11 task forces, I designated a public health expert or diplomatic or financial expert, and then gave them or requested of them, since this was all on volunteer time on everybody's part, to organize a group of international experts to work on this. I was chair right from the beginning of the process, which was the middle of 2020, just as the pandemic was reaching the first half year. And it was around that time, Richard Horton and I talked and thought that a commission would be a good idea. By the way, not only to review all that happened, we didn't know how long this would last, but also to make some recommendations along the way of how to try to keep this under control, how to make sure that there was health equity for desperately poor people who needed access to medicines or hospitals.
Just make sure you do the math in your head right. 22 means 23, 24, 25. This is 3 full years ago. This is the summer of 2022. 3 full years ago. Bobby hasn't even declared his candidacy yet.
Hospitals or protection or face masks or whatever it is. Richard Horton asked me to head this and to organize it. The commission itself is 40 public policy leaders from around the world. The former president of the UN General Assembly, former president in a European country, several scientists, many financial experts, and so on. But for me,
what chance does Bobby Kennedy have if Mary Holland, Meryl Nass, Kevin McKernan, Robert Malone, Jeffrey Sachs, Gavin DeBecker, all these people that are close to him are essentially connected to this shit? What chance does he have? And if he figured it out, what chance would he have to do anything about it? It's a Trojan horse, ladies and gentlemen. They used a guy who probably really wanted to do something right for America for a really long time, for maybe his whole life. They used him and spit him out already. And you can see it if you open your eyes.
And for us in our discussion today, one part of this assignment was, so where'd this come from? And I can tell you at the beginning of my engagement in this issue, well, even from the beginning of the pandemic itself, I assumed this came out of nature the same way that SARS apparently came out of nature in 2003, 2004. In the case of SARS, best guess is that it really was an animal sold in a wet market in China that was carrying that virus. MERS, which is another coronavirus, the Middle East respiratory syndrome, was carried by camel. I assumed, okay, this is yet another one of these so-called zoonoses. And I thought, who knows a lot about that? But the guy who's looking at these viruses in the wild, Peter Daszak. So I asked him, well, you're around this, you know what's going on in China. Why don't you establish the task force? So it's interesting for me. I was not in any way on the lab leak side of things at the beginning. In fact, I thought,
this is the perfect Scooby-Doo act right here. The perfect, I didn't suspect this at all. until I started running this commission and they all started lying to me. They were lying to me. And since they were lying to me, it must be a lab leak. Oh.
That doesn't sound right. And I remember explaining in a very learned way to a good friend of mine, no, that's not right. This is natural, sometime in the spring of 2020. So what we're talking about, Bobby, is my education also. Because
the most important thing to understand here is that nobody who knows their biology was ever doubting a lab leak possibility. Nobody. If you were an expert in the Bad Biology 101, then you already knew that a lab leak was likely. You already read the articles about all the lab leaks that are happening that nobody reports. You already read about the water contamination at US Amrid. This is, again, a message only for the people who needed to hear it. And more importantly, only those people can really hear what this message is.
I got to watch this story very close up by some of the principles involved in making the case that it's from nature, from this Wuhan market, which is the one that is featured in, say, the New York Times stories in the last few months about the scientists finding the origins and so forth. And I can tell you that over the period of 2 years, I was lied to so many times. Dashik told me so many things that were not true. I was the opposite of transparent. I had to tell him, well, you can't head this task force, and even later, soon after that, you can't even be on the commission. So I didn't disband the commission, but I did take him off of the task force. And then and it keeps coming, by the way, the task force members were dishonest to me after I was completely clear with them. I want to know what your potential conflicts of interest are. Are you involved with EcoHealth Alliance with Dashik? Are you involved with Wuhan Institute of Virology? Are you involved with NIH in a way that we should understand that there may be a potential conflict for you? And Bobby, none of them told the truth. Maybe that's not shocking, but it was surprising to me because these are some of them people that I've known, I would say personal friends in some cases, for 20 years. They absolutely did not tell the truth when I asked them clearly, explicitly. So that was one part of the story, my growing dismay, consternation that something is really, really wrong about this. And then on the other side, as those who follow this story, and you are certainly among the lead in that, the Freedom of Information Act and leaks, one by one, were demolishing the premises of the natural spillover story, but also revealing the utter transparency and misdirection that the US government was leading basically from the start. So we were not hearing the truth. Again, why am I surprised? But it's dismaying to see it come out step by step in this way. And what is absolutely clear to me is that there are two viable hypotheses about the origin of this, and one of them is out of a lab, and there's nothing outlandish about it at all. And in fact, like you said, I think it's the odds-on explanation. I don't speak for the whole commission in that regard. What the commission sees is that there are two viable explanations, but I can tell you 2 years into this, with all the deceit, deception, lying that I've seen, the scientists on the Wuhan market side vastly overstate.
I was wrong about that. So Ancient Relic just brought up something that I got wrong. So Housatonic probably said it because I said it, but it was actually Roger Ailes who Bobby Kennedy spent a couple months or a month in a tent in Africa with. Roger Ailes. I think that's the Fox News dude. So not Jeffrey Sachs, Roger Ailes. It was my bad, not Mark's, my bad.
Or misdirecting the gays and the absolute absurd, sad, worrisome, frightening unwillingness of the US government, starting with NIH, to look closely at the lab hypothesis. It's really very telling. So that's just to set the scene. I started on the other side, but I watched very closely. And like all of us, I've been an avid reader of the drip, drip, drip of information that has been pried out of the hands of NIH.
Pried out of the hands of NIH, like the emails were pried out of their hands. We got those FOIAs, man. We got the FOIAs. We got the goods on these people, despite their best effort to stop us from finding the truth. Because this Scooby-Doo mystery is going to be solved, and Jeffrey Sachs is going to get to the bottom of it one way or another. Peter Daszak's not going to stop me.
Because they're not talking, they're not forthcoming, they're not being honest. Fauci's not telling it like it is. By drip, the story's coming out, and it's a very worrisome one.
You know, my approach to this was different than yours, because I approach with this enormous skepticism that I've cultivated that basically has grown unwillingly in me since 2005, and watching Fauci very carefully and watching the journals and how they've devolved. And in fact, in 2004, Richard Horton made the statement that the scientific journals, particularly the Lancet, had devolved into propaganda vessels for the pharmaceutical industry. And Marcia Engel, at the same time, published her book, who's a longtime publisher of the New England Journal of Medicine, and basically saying there's nothing in the journals that you can believe anymore. So much of our revenue comes from pharma. And now the Lancet is owned by Elsevier, which is, a very, very wealthy company that's getting, basically pharma is its partner, and China. And throughout the pandemic, we watched the Lancet, we watched Horton do all of these kind of underhanded things where he had to retract articles. They published the article on remdesivir that allowed them, like even the World Health Organization was saying, this stuff is poison, it doesn't work, it has no efficacy. And he published the article for Fauci that allowed Fauci to then go get approval for this very, very deadly drug. He had to do the retraction on the Surgisphere studies. He tried to discredit hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin and any kind of early treatment. I so admire your integrity on this issue and your willingness to publicly change your mind, which is, so admirable. My father's, one of his favorite quotes was from Aeschylus, which was, it's not a crime to make a mistake. Essentially, the only crime is not admitting that you did it. The great sin is pride. And that gets us in so much trouble when people are unwilling to change their minds. So I know that most people who come from your and my background assume that the government and the pharmaceutical industry were kind of doing their best. And it was hard to believe that, and I've watched people, I had to come to my own set of revelations and, over time, I know you had to come to yours. Dave, what do you think? I mean, how many people on that commission, how many people were on the commission, the Wuhan commission, essentially the Origins Commission?
Of the task force.
Yeah,
not the commission, task force. Just to use the verbiage. I think it was 10 to 15. All of them, by the way, basically handpicked by Daszak, because
a lot of those guys were the same virologists and immunologists and biologists who signed on to.
He can be real. He can just be trying to follow this stuff. He's not a biologist. I don't think he's obligated to understand that virology is an illusion created by transfection and transformation using synthetic constructs until after I told him. And it was after this. After this is when I told him. Now imagine after I told him that he actually comes to that realization that all these people have been lying to me, because if Jonathan Cooey's right, then I'm being played. I mean, just think about this for a second, ladies and gentlemen, because we don't see him on the Sunday programs. We don't see him on the nightly news. We see Marty Makary.
The Lancet letter, which it turns out Daszak had secretly orchestrated.
So let me just give you the background on that. I asked each of the task force chairs to organize their task forces under a broad rubric, which was international diversity, gender diversity, professional background diversity, and so on. And by and large, out of 11 task forces, 10 did so. And Daszak surrounded himself by his colleagues, basically. So,
it's a really long story to explain why there's a lab leak cover-up, and it's partly Daszak's fault. Maybe even Daszak did it. Whoa, we're going to find the diffuse. Oh, goodness sakes, look what's coming. The diffuse proposal.
As I explained to you, as time went on, and people immediately attacked me, and I said, by the way, and I meant it from the first moment, I only want to know what happened. I only want to know the truth. There's no setup. No one forced me to pick Daszak, by the way. It wasn't Richard Horton or Lancet. Nobody. This was my blunder. So I stepped into it right at the beginning, thinking, well, here's the guy that knows most of what's going on. So I stepped into it. He organized around it. People criticized me in the fall of 2020. This is a setup.
He's very good at casually glancing down to his notes.
Up job and so forth. And I said, no, I'm a serious person. I'm absolutely have no plan, desire, incentive in any way to steer this other than towards the truth. And I promised to do that. And Republican congressman wrote to me saying Daszak has to go. And I said, no. But believe me, he's not going to write the final report. This is for the commission. He heads a task force.
Yes. Richard Horton is who he's talking about.
The commission will judge, and I'm the chair of the commission, and you can count on me to make sure that we look at everything. And of course, from the first moment, that was my intention. And then people started to explain some basic facts to me about what was going on, what the research underway in the U.S. and in Wuhan.
What's going on with my videos?
The research that was so dangerous. So potentially the source of all of this.
I'm trying to interrupt my stream again.
And so at one point early in 2021, I said to Daszak on what the research underway in the U.S. and in Wuhan were, the research that was so dangerous. So potentially the source of all of this. And so at one point early in 2021, I said to Daszak, look, I need to see your research proposals to NIH because I'm hearing a lot of things. And Daszak said to me, no, I can't give those to you. My lawyers say I can't give those to you. So what do you mean? We're a transparent commission. And I need to see them. No, I can't give them to you. I said, well, Peter, then you can't be chair of this task force. You have to stop that. And then it became more clear in the days ahead. He was lying to me about a lot of things, about what was and what wasn't going on in terms of dangerous research in Wuhan. And I said, okay, you can't be on the commission either. So I pushed him off. I said, you've got to leave. This absolutely is impossible. I'm running a transparent, open, honest commission. Then what was interesting, Bobby, is that, of course, the other 10 to 15 members went after me. What's the matter with you, Sachs, you anti-science, reckless, buying into the right-wing conspiracy theory and everything you could imagine? And one of them was a friend of mine for, as I said, for probably about 25 years, who ripped into me personally, like I don't usually experience, but saying how...
Tell us who he was.
It's because of the personal thing. Let me just mention the bottom line, though, which was hilarious.
I can't do it. I can't do it anymore, ladies and gentlemen. It's enough. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm trying to show you with this. You know what I want you to see. It is a scripted group of people. The script that they are on precludes any real biology. They're never going to allow our children to escape if we don't throw off social media as a means of communication. Ladies and gentlemen, RNA pandemic intramuscular injection is not a form of medicine. Transfecting healthy people is also not a form of medicine, and the population pyramids are real. And if there's any kind of geophysical, socioeconomic disaster coming, it is the slow motion train wreck that is the Western civilization's population pyramid. There's not going to be as many bees in the hive anymore, and so they need to mitigate the collapse slowly, slowly. It's a long time scale. And so they're using it as an excuse to put us in a digital prison and use us as experimental animals, because that was always the plan, ladies and gentlemen. That's been the plan for a long time. Just trying to figure out the plausible story that would get everybody to accept it.
The one thing I am confident of from everything I've read is that this RNA exists. You can capture it, you can sequence it, you can move it to other cells and recapitulate disease.
We will not call autism. I don't like the word autism. He was vaccine damaged. He was neurologically damaged.
Happy Thursday. Tomorrow's Friday, I think, right? Let me check that quick. Yeah, is it tomorrow Friday? What's going on? Why won't you tell me what the date is? I'm hovering. There we go. Yes, tomorrow's Friday. Thank you very much for joining me, everybody. Good to see everybody in the chat. Thanks for being here. And I will see you again tomorrow.